for understanding A Course in Miracles. So we will be reading today section 2.4. It's healing as a way of releasing ourselves from fear. So when we talk about healing in A Course in Miracles, we mean it not in the sense of a physical wound that needs to heal biologically. We're talking about healing the mind from the grips of fear. Healing as a release from fear. So let's start off with you helping me to understand. Miracle principle number 23 says that miracles rearrange perception and place all levels in true perspective. This is healing because sickness comes from confusing the levels. So what does that mean to you? How do you understand that to be? And don't feel uncomfortable if it doesn't mean a whole lot to you, or if it doesn't really register significantly. The intent of today and tomorrow is that this would become very clear. But this is principle number 23 on page 1 of the textbook, says that mental sickness comes from confusing the levels, and that miracles heal by rearranging perception and placing the levels in a true perspective. That is our goal. We acknowledge that the world is confused about levels, but we are here to learn to heal by placing those levels in true perspective. So with that, there's a couple themes going on today. I just thought we'd prepare your mind for what it is we're going to cover. We said level confusion is a fundamental error, so that needs to be dealt with. It has a number of attributes, of only a few of which are mentioned here. One is confusing the levels. We wind up identifying with the body, and then we overemphasize or over-evaluate the body's role in life. It results in, level confusion results in misusing the power of your mind, using it for miscreation and for magic. We'll go over that today. And these magic beliefs, which I think this is the first time it's being mentioned in the textbook, are largely unconscious beliefs that result from level confusion, from not understanding the difference. Remember, miracles rearrange perception and place all levels in their true perspective. Well, in the absence of that, people wind up believing in magic. So we'll go over the way, and that magic needs to be defined as defined within A Course in Miracles, not stage magic. So ultimately, the goal here is to clarify our understanding of the function of the mind and see that as in its proper perspective with respect to the physical level. So we clarify our understanding of the mind, and we clarify our understanding of the body, and stop getting the two confused. Well, having said all that, we'll get started in our reading. And Julie C. from Virginia, I want to thank you for being our reader today.
Our emphasis is now on healing. The miracle is the means. The atonement is the principle. and healing is the result. To speak of a miracle of healing is to combine two orders of reality inappropriately. Healing is not a miracle. The atonement, or the final miracle, is a remedy, and any type of healing is the result. The kind of error to which atonement is applied is irrelevant. All healing is essentially the release from fear. To undertake this, you cannot be fearful yourself. You do not understand healing because of your own fear. A major step in the atonement plan is to undo error at all levels.
So truly, these are the ABCs of A Course in Miracles. Understanding a miracle. We've talked about atonement several times in previous sessions. Today, we're talking about miracles in relationship to healing and confusion that comes about from a confusion in the levels. I wouldn't be too concerned if these things are, if you're not fluent in these terms. I wouldn't be too concerned with trying to distinguish how miracles and healing belong to two different orders of reality. That's a subtle point, or a more, I'll call it, advanced insight into these matters. But do understand they're not the same. A miracle is literally a gift from the divine. It is heaven sent to earth, whereas healing is fixing a problem. Is healing is taking a mind that is wrapped in fear and helping to pull it out of that fear, and so that it can stabilize. So healing is something only done on earth. There's no healing going on in heaven at all. There's no need for it there. But a miracle would be the means of bringing about that healing on earth. Again, the miracle is heaven sent. So let's understand one bit of language here that will be said 100 times in the course. We read earlier in chapter 1 that it's first necessary to have a vision of the goal, of the outcome, which we said was the restoration of all things back to the Creator. It's the restoration of the sonship to its original state. That's the goal. And that where your heart is, there will your treasure be also. So the first step is to hold the atonement in your heart, that goal of the restoration of all things to oneness. And then once you have done that, the means will be explained to you of how to get there. Okay? The goal comes first, the direction towards the goal, the desire to get there, and then how you get there will be explained to you. A miracle or a correction to your perception is the means for helping you and everyone else to get to restoration, to redemption. We also call it resurrection. It's the rebirth of yourself into the memory of God. So, but we can't begin there. That's the goal. We have to begin with the problem called being released from fear. Because none of this matters if fear rocks your world all day long. on a regular basis, if you get blown off balance by fear, all this talk of better days to come is just hollow until we've been freed from our fears. And you can't be helpful to anybody else as long as you're fearful yourself. And you can't understand healing because of your own fears. Therefore, the major step is to undo our confusion about fear and about the physical level fears for safety and attack, to undo the confusion that grips the human condition. So that is our topic today. Comments or questions before we go on? All right, let's go on. Julie?
A major step in the atonement plan is to undo error at all levels. Sickness or not right-mindedness is the result of level confusion, because it always entails the belief that what is amiss on one level can adversely affect another. We have referred to miracles as the means of correcting level confusion, for all mistakes must be corrected at the level on which they occur. Only the mind is capable of error.
Okay, so let's give an example of not right-mindedness as a result of level confusion, because it's a belief that what is wrong on one level can adversely affect another. So most typically, this has to do with the mind-body, the mind level being confused with the body level. So I fell and I broke my leg. It must have been because I was holding in my mind a grievance about somebody. That would be a belief that what is amiss in my mind can adversely affect my physical life. So it's a confusion about cause and effect. It's attributing a manifestation on the physical level, its cause of being a mental error or a mental problem. This could also happen on other levels. You could think that I'm depressed because there's something wrong on my spiritual level. Mentally depressed, I'll just say depression is a mental state of thought and feelings of one loses hope and falls into a pit of despair, and that's because I sinned against God. This is thought by many people to be God has sent this depression on me because of I said. So all this is ways, and that we could go on and on and on and on. I'm just citing examples so you understand how the mechanics here work. It's attributing a problem on one level to an effect on another level, and thus confusing the levels. And therefore, as a result of confusing the levels, instead of going to the cause of the problem, we try to put a repair or a remedy in at the level in which, at a different level. So that would be, an example of that would be if I am feeling unhappy today, let me go have a drink. Let me drink alcohol as a way of helping my mind. So I'm going to intoxicate my body in order to make my mind feel better. That's a confusion of levels. And I'm not saying that's the reason why people always drink alcohol. There are other reasons as well. But that would be an example of someone who's trying to use a remedy on a different level from where the error or the problem arises. Okay, so let's talk about this some more. Noelle, you had a comment?
Yes, your last example was very clear, but the previous, in terms of a physical manifestation being the result of wrong thinking, what about as a man thinketh in his heart, so be it. And also, I know other disciplines attribute physical manifestations to mental causations.
They do.
Mental mistakes, errors, resentments, as you said, small thinking, judgments. So how then do we, or should we, interpret manifestation of an illness, physical?
Well, first I want to affirm, Noelle, it's very true. Many traditions or thought systems teach as one of the central themes that physical illnesses result from spiritual or mental problems. I affirm that that is widespread. That's what we would call level confusion. And when we get in A Course in Miracles context and seek to correct that teaching, it's often like wrestling something away from someone because they've learned it so well in other systems. A person is often reluctant to want to relinquish that belief. In fact, what typically happens is people rush in to defend the belief in level confusion. So that makes the task of learning more difficult here. So your question was, and I heard you, then what is the cause of physical illness? And we'll just simply say physical illness occurs because of physical issues, not because of mental issues, or certainly not because of spiritual issues. And the deeper exploration of that we'll save until the end of class or overtime.
Okay, because I had another question, but I'll hold it.
Right. Yeah, this topic tends to occupy a lot of bandwidth because it is a big unlearning from, as you said, from what other traditions have said about these things. Julie, you had a comment?
Yeah, question. So in terms of level confusion, does the ego live in the mind? And so the mind is what is capable of being healed?
That's largely correct. Remember, the ego is really a belief system. It's not an entity like it's in your mind, but we're going to get it to leave your mind and go somewhere else. It's really the ego, Julie, I'm sorry to say, but it's really our misplaced faith in a set of ideas and beliefs, a false self system. And yes, the domain where that happens is our conscious mind, which was really to the root of your question. Where does the egos show up at? Well, because of our beliefs in ego view of reality, we wind up thinking in terms of ego concepts, and then make decisions based on ego concepts and actions based on ego concepts. So all that is clearly happening in our conscious mind. And we will also, when we go deeper into this, Julie, realize that there are fears that are occupied in our subconscious mind. And we would attribute that to ego domain as well. But really what are they? They are objects of belief. I believe this will hurt me. I believe there's a flat earth. I believe that the earth is the center of the universe. These are just all beliefs. And therefore, and the beauty of that is that we have the power to change our mind and discard those beliefs, because they have no power in themselves. It's only our mind giving power to those beliefs that keeps them, I don't want to say alive, that keeps them from occurring in our conscious mind. So it's great. And that's why we call this a learning. It's an unlearning of the old beliefs and having them replaced by a new set of beliefs that are informed by the Course. Okay, so therefore, and it was obvious, the Course centers its focus, Noel, around sickness and healing is on the mind, not on how we repair the body, because only the mind is capable of error. Course would say at a high level, when we get our mind straight and make better choices, then as a result of that, all the other levels will balance out. Okay, so, and finally, kind of etch this in your memory. What is sickness in the Course of Miracles? It does not refer to physical sickness. Sickness is a state of mind. It's not right-minded. And it is caused, it's a result of confusing the levels. It's having a mind that is upside down and interchanging guilt and fear and physical realities are all mishmashed together and confused. So therefore, this is a fundamental error that needs to be corrected. Let's go on and look at it a little bit more.
Only the mind is capable of error. The body can act wrongly only when it is responding to misthought. The body cannot create, and the belief that it can, a fundamental error, produces all physical symptoms. Physical illness represents a belief in magic. The whole distortion that made magic rests on the belief that there is a creative ability in matter which the mind cannot control. This error can take two forms. It can be believed that the mind can miscreate in the body, or that the body can miscreate in the mind. When it is understood that the mind, the only level of creation, cannot create beyond itself, neither type of confusion need occur.
So I want to acknowledge, while there's a lot here, this is not altogether obvious in any way on the first few readings. That's why we unpack it in these sessions, to try to break it down to make it more easy to follow. So we're talking about, in this paragraph, confusion of the body level with the mind level and attributing to one aspects of the other. So that's there. And that the belief that the body can initiate things on its own is a fundamental error. And in ways that are very difficult to understand, that error produces physical symptoms. So, Noel, this really addresses part of your question. So illness, physical illness now, we need to be clear when we say illness that we mean physical illness, gets confused with magical beliefs. So what am I going to do with my mind to help repair my physical illness? That's a belief in magic, that I can use mental process to repair a physical illness. Okay, so here's an example. I went in late at night into the bathroom to take a pain medication, and I took some poison instead. So should I pray for forgiveness in order to, what should I do? I've just taken some poison. Should I pray for forgiveness? No, I should go take care of my body, probably go have, either induce vomiting or go to a medical center for care. You need a physical solution for a physical problem, not a mental solution for a physical problem. So the belief that you can use a mental solution for a physical problem is a belief in magic. And that belief comes about because of a belief that because of this level of confusion. And that error takes on two forms, and these two forms, this can be difficult, and I don't want to drag you all through in-depth unraveling of these two forms. But let's just say the error occurs on both a misunderstanding of the role of mind, and the other form is a misunderstanding of the role of the physical level. Okay, so we need to get really clear about both of them. Again, only the mind is capable of error. And this course is a course to correct the errors of your mind. Julie, the belief in the ego is an error of the mind. If we correct that error, then we stop giving power to those beliefs, and the ego, there is none. There is no ego. Okay, Noel?
Well, Jesus, when he healed, like the man with the withered hand, he didn't say, go get it, go to the physician and get it straightened out, get it bound up, get a cast. He just said, stretch forth your hand. And every one of his healings, except maybe one or two, he did not use physical means. I don't mean to be belligerent, but I have believed always, or a long time, that mental mistakes create physical, and all the correspondences. So I'd like your take on what he did and how he did it.
Fair question. Let's deal with that in overtime, and we can talk about Mary Baker Eddy's teachings and teachings of Jesus and that in overtime. I'm happy to discuss that with you. So I know, like I said, that the undoing level confusion in A Course of Miracles is like a wrestling match. And because there is, it's embedded in almost every system in our world. So it's believed to be true and without question. And then miracles comes along and presents a unraveling of those notions. And so few people will change their mind overnight regarding these matters. Think of this as part of a journey of learning. And our goal really here is to not to convince you, but to introduce the ideas and some of the major principles. Kathy?
The physical illness represents a belief in magic. So to me, magic in the Course in Miracles means belief in self-will over Holy Spirit's will. So that's when we're not consulting the Holy Spirit, essentially. Is that right?
Well, the way when you said it had an appeal to it because I like the simplicity of it. Is magic? I would say, if I could nuance your statement a little, Kathy, that if I believe my mental illness can be healed without the Holy Spirit, then I'm going to resort to magic. You're right. And therefore, all other forms of trying to heal the mind that ignore the Holy Spirit are magic. So, and now that, yeah, so that covers a lot of ground. Yeah. Most addictions are a result of someone trying to escape a mental state that they find uncomfortable, sometimes called the hole in the soul. And then we take a substance, a physical substance, which literally alters chemistries in the body and brain in order to fix a mental error, an error in the mind. And so we get back to the Course, only the mind is capable of making the error. And what we said in the previous paragraph is an error needs to be corrected at the level it occurred. If the error occurred in the mind, then we need to correct the mind, not take something in the body in an attempt to correct the mind. That's, and because that happens commonly in society, whether it be alcoholism or drug addiction or any other form of addiction, these ideas are greeted as alien at first.
Yeah, I've had cancer twice, and I've had, I have bipolar disorder. So I consider the bipolar disorder even a physical illness because it's a brain chemistry and balance.
Yeah.
And I take medicine. Well, if I don't take my medicine, I'm in trouble, and I had to, for the cancers, in my mind, I had to do the surgery. And I felt like the cause of all of that was stress. And my lack of evolution in a spiritual path, and luckily I was only stage 1 last year, so I'm doing really well. But yeah, so I don't know, that sentence stuck out to me.
It sticks out to me too, and so remember, we're introducing some radical ideas here. The real goal is, one, don't close your mind. Try to at least learn what it says, even if you don't believe it. And many times people first doing the workbook lessons was the same thing. God is part of my mind. I'm very holy. They didn't believe it. They read the words, but they didn't believe it. So we're doing a little bit of that here, depending on how long you've been working with these ideas. Noel?
I can see that this section enlarges the thought process, enlarges what I believe, and what makes me more open to more principles than previously. And I also really liked what Kathy said. Is it an insult to the Holy Spirit to not to enact or put in our minds these principles, as if we're turning away from the real solution?
Yeah. All right. So I just trust the Holy Spirit has seen it all, folks. Literally has seen it all. She's not easily insulted. Anything that doesn't work for our good is merely dismissed as not being useful. So she doesn't take it badly.
Maybe like recalcitrant children, mischievous children.
Yeah. Fortunately, she has divine patience with us. All right, so we'll go on.
Only the mind can create, because spirit has already been created, and the body is a learning device for the mind. Learning devices are not lessons in themselves. Their purpose is merely to facilitate learning. The worst a faulty use of a learning device can do is to fail to facilitate learning. It has no power in itself to introduce actual learning errors.
Mm-hmm. All right, so a learning device is anything that is used for the purposes of helping us learn. Flashcards, some people use flashcards when they study for an exam. It's a device used to help us learning. Well, the body is a learning device to help the mind. Said another way, from the Holy Spirit's perspective, what is the purpose of the body? To help the mind learn that it is not a body. The Holy Spirit wants you to use your experience in the body and go through all those chapters of life until you finally learn that your mind is not a body, and that it was the mind where the mistakes had been made. The body just did what you told it to do. That's not the source of the problem. And so it's a learning device. And it can be, therefore, useful to the Holy Spirit if you're willing. The body can be recruited into the Holy Spirit's plan if you're willing. And that holds out great hope for the body being repurposed from self-willed, self-deceptive ideas being replaced by Holy Spirit inspired guidance. Then the body becomes holy. So in this short paragraph, we have the 3 levels. The reason why I formatted it on the page like this is so that the 3 levels, which are in one sentence, can be clearly distinguished. The mind can create. The spirit has already been created. The body is not a creation. It's a device for learning by the mind. Those are the three levels. But in time and space and in confusion, people make the body an end in itself. They make the body the center of their identity system, such that the conditions of the body, we'll get to this in a moment, become overemphasized to an extraordinary degree, whereas the state of the mind is relegated to a backseat position in life, and while the state of the body is elevated to the center of attention. This is level confusion. So what the Course says is the purpose of the body is here to help us learn. The worst it can do is fail to learn. If at the end of your last breath, you haven't learned what the body was for, well, that's the worst that could happen, is that you never got the lesson. You just failed to learn. In itself, the body cannot introduce actual problems in your life. It can't make the mind mistaken. The body is not the source of your confusion in your mind about what you are, because the body cannot introduce an error into the mind. That's level confusion. It's the mind that is the source of the issue. That's where the learning needs to occur. All right, so again, take these ideas as first pass, perhaps, for many. I know I struggled with it. I eventually came around to realizing there's a deep wisdom here that my ego did not want to learn or accept. So the best thing you could do is just allow the information in without fighting it. We know that it doesn't fit into the logic of things you've been taught in other traditions that were confusing the levels. Julie, let's go on.
The body, if properly understood, shares the invulnerability of the atonement to two-edged application. This is not because the body is a miracle, but because it is not inherently open to misinterpretation. The body is merely part of your experience in the physical world. Its abilities can be, and frequently are, over-evaluated. However, it is almost impossible to deny its existence in this world. Those who do so are engaging in a particularly unworthy form of denial. The term unworthy here implies only that it is not necessary to protect the mind by denying the unmindful. If one denies this unfortunate aspect of the mind's power, one is also denying the power itself.
All right, we really need to unpack this. A lot of miracle students seem to have torn this page out of their book. Or more correctly, they glossed over it without understanding and never came back, and therefore continued on as if this was not part of the teaching system. All right, so we're not anti-body. The Holy Spirit is not against the body. We just said the Holy Spirit would like to repurpose the body for the plan of atonement. So there's no negativity or shame or in anything else shadow being displayed. The mind should not be in any way in conflict with what the body is. As we said, it's certainly is a part of your experience in this physical world. That should be self-evident. The body is a part of your experience while you're here in this world. What happens, though, is we then start telling stories about our body, and this is what leads to it being over-evaluated. We become preoccupied and elevate the role of the body to, as I said before, oftentimes the mind is put into the backseat relative to the body's priority. So it's a faith in the body that is stronger than it warrants. But please don't be confused. We're not denying the existence of the body in the physical world. It would be almost impossible to deny its existence in this world. And anyone that does is engaging, they're using denial in a way that is not useful, not helpful. To deny the body's existence in the world. And so what that means is we're denying the body's existence. Here we go, level confusion, is using the power of your mind to decide what you're going to believe and using that as a weapon against the body by saying my body doesn't really exist, which is a very odd way to become an integrated being, to have your mind in opposition or attacking the role of the body. It's an unnecessary conflict. But so let's summarize. While you're in the physical world, there's a body. It's a part of your existence. When your time in this world is up, you leave it behind. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. The body is gone. It is not a part of who you are. It does not go on forever and ever and ever. This should be obvious. But while you're here in the physical world, it's certainly a part of your existence. So we want to move. This is a course that helps you to integrate your understanding of body, mind, and spirit by not being confused about these levels, but seeing them in their proper relationship to each other. So the body is a temporary learning device, but it's only temporary. It's a part of your existence in this world, but it has nothing to do with your existence beyond this world. And to use your mind to tell a different story about your body that either overemphasizes your body or else goes negative and tries to denigrate your body is to use your mind against your body. We don't need to be using the power of our mind that way. Again, Julie, this is a misuse of the power of our mind in a way that is not going to help anybody. And maybe you do this to yourself, or maybe you've noticed you're doing this, you're in your views of other people's bodies. So it doesn't really matter which body you're talking about. If you're confused about the levels, you will project these doubts within yourself outward on other people and become, it's a particularly unworthy use of denial, and wind up telling stories about their bodily condition and how meaningful that is, or it's just, it goes down into more confusion begets more confusion. As I say in Course in Miracles, illusions beget more illusions. Illusions never bring about the truth, are never the cause of the truth or cause of healing. They just perpetuate more illusions. Okay, so denial can be used in a positive way to deny that which is false, but to deny the body's existence is particularly unworthy. So I've made that point more than enough here. Let's go on.
All material means that you accept as remedies for bodily ills are restatements of magic principles. This is the first step in believing that the body makes its own illness. It is the second misstep to heal it through non-creative agents. It does not follow, however, that the use of such agents for corrective purposes is evil. Sometimes the illness has a sufficiently strong hold over the mind to render a person temporarily inaccessible to the atonement. In this case, it may be wise to utilize a compromise approach to mind and body, in which something from the outside is temporarily given healing belief. This is because the last thing that can help the non-right-minded or the sick is an increase in fear. They are already in a fear-weakened state. If they are prematurely exposed to a miracle, they may be precipitated into panic. This is likely to occur when upside-down perception has induced the belief that miracles are frightening.
So, wow, it says a lot there. You know, there's only 5 paragraphs in this section, but my goodness, what covers a lot of ground. So now we're talking about illness, physical illness, and where the mind is confused about these levels and the mind is fearful, and then the body becomes ill. This is probably most examples of physical illness in the world. The mind's already confused and then the body becomes ill. And it says real clearly here, in this case, it may be wise to utilize a compromise approach to mind and body. So this is very practical. Utilize a compromise approach, and that is to take something that will be helpful here. I don't want to get into too many specifics or particulars because there aren't any specifics or particulars taught here. And I don't want to interpret what it means here, but suffice it to say, throughout centuries of time, there have been Eastern and Western remedies for physical conditions. But what they're suggesting here, and I am interpreting here, is the placebo effect can be very powerful. If you give something to someone and the person who gives it is considered a medicine man or a doctor or an authority, and you say, here, take this, you will get better, then what we know is a large percentage of people do get better. And all the drug tests, the pharmaceutical industry does constant tests for every drug before they can release it in the United States that has a study where half the participants get a placebo, a sugar pill, and they're told this is a medication to help your illness. And they have the numbers here, a large percentage of them get better. And so in some cases, it may be wise to do this because the last thing a person who's confused and ill needs is to become afraid of a miracle. The last thing they need is more confusion. There are, and in fact, any suggestion that there may be another issue, other issues at play in their condition could precipitate them into a panic, and that certainly would not be helpful. And in fact, a panic is likely to occur when they're already in a confused state and where they become afraid of miracles. So the author of this book, you can sense the concern here. We don't want people to become afraid of the power of the miracle. Many people are not yet free of fear, and therefore it may be wiser to continue to reinforce the beliefs that they already have, that if someone who knows better, like a doctor, says, here, take this pill, that fits within their mental framework. And we know, my goodness, pharmaceutical industries have the numbers. It's amazing how many people get better just from the sugar pill. By the way, there's nothing in A Course in Miracles about sugar pills or pharmaceutical industries. That was my commentary. I think you know that. Noelle?
So, fright at miracles, would that be, for one thing, because someone might interpret that as magic or shamanism? Why, in other words, why would someone be afraid of a miracle?
I like that question, Noelle. What we're going to find out, certainly by chapter 19, is people will project their fears on almost anything, and people will project their fears onto what they understand to be a divine spirit, some entity they cannot see and they do not understand. So they project their fears out there. And if you tell them that that's going to be a force that's going to bring healing to them, their fears just get further stirred up rather than being welcomed as a solution. So the grip of fear can be very strong. And so the reason why all of what we're reading about is here in chapter 2 comes back to the central thesis, is we must first release ourselves from fear. Healing is a release from fear. We cannot move to the next phase of healing with a miracle until we've learned to manage the fears that arise in our own mind. Okay, last paragraph here.
The value of the atonement does not lie in the manner in which it is expressed. In fact, if it is used truly, it will inevitably be expressed in whatever way is most helpful to the receiver. This means that a miracle, to attain its full efficacy, must be expressed in a language that the recipient can understand without fear. This does not necessarily mean that this is the highest level of communication of which he is capable. It does mean, however, that it is the highest level of communication of which he is capable now. The whole aim of the miracle is to raise the level of communication, not to lower it by increasing fear.
Mm-hmm. So this is really a message to people who are working miracles, that we're dealing in a world full of fear. And they may be even afraid of having their mind changed by the Holy Spirit. And therefore, it is necessary that we learn to express in a language that the recipient can understand without fear. And so I think of how you would explain something to a 5-year-old differently than maybe you would explain it to a 25-year-old. You would adapt your language, even though your message and your thought might be the same on both. You would adapt your language in a way that could be understood by the recipient. And so it's important when we're dealing with A Course in Miracles that we don't go in, I'm going to dramatize it, with guns a-blazing. Hey, we've got the power of miracles here, the Holy Spirit, and with guns a-blazing in order to try to convince people of something they do not understand and aren't prepared to hear at this moment. As it says, it doesn't mean that the language you're going to use is the highest level of communication the recipient is capable of, but it does mean it's the highest level of communication that he's capable of at the very moment, at right now. And so ultimately, the goal of the miracle is to improve soul-to-soul communication. We touched on this before when I went over the 7 categories of spiritual communication. Ultimately, the goal of the miracle is to raise the level of communication and bring back, restore to the mind attitude of gratitude, soul-to-soul communication, communication with the Holy Spirit, communication with the Christ mind, and ultimately communion with the Creator. Ultimately, that's the goal. But that's not where we are intend to start with people who are currently in a state of fear and would be unable to understand when confronted with some of these ideas. So the miracle worker needs to be wise and harmless and learn to express in a way that is most helpful to the receiver. And so I thought of another example where I know I found myself in a few instances, like when you get together with a friend who just lost a loved one, like with a wife that just lost her husband, or a brother lost a sister, or even a pet that somebody lived with for 15 years. To just go in there guns a-blazing and kind of just like nothing happened would be insensitive and unkind. We learn to respect the feeling state of another and the condition they're in, and perhaps postpone some things until a better time, and just focus on what they need the most in that moment, which, as you may know, is just to be that there's somebody there for them, and that I love you, I care. I know this is a hard time you're going through. Let me know if there's anything I can do. And let all the other stuff, so you adapt your expression to the condition the person's within. And so, Kathy, we talked about this in the past, about people who are asking for help, but maybe don't really understand the level of communication that we might use here. And so a miracle worker seeks guidance in being understanding what could be most helpful in that moment to that person. This is true in A Course in Miracles. This is true in life. To recognize that some people are going through enormous shock. And if we're going to be helpful to them, we have to learn to express in a language that they can understand in that moment. Doesn't mean that's the highest language they're ever able to understand, just means it's the highest language they can understand right now. Cheryl?
I think you just described empathy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Putting yourself in someone's shoes, putting
Yeah.
your ego aside,
Right.
and being their friend, and without compromising yourself, of course, giving them, hearing what they need,
Right.
paraphrasing what they need,
Right.
and giving them what they need.
Yes. True. And Cheryl, before class, we were talking about how I tutored 3rd and 4th graders. The same thing is true there. The little boy thinks he's the only one in the class that doesn't know how to read, feels really discouraged, have to work within the framework that is given, and meet him where he's at, and try to restore their confidence in life. And it's very empathetic. Yeah.
Yeah, I've had to learn that. I don't think I had any empathy, honestly. And that's been one of my goals, to learn that, grace, empathy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's got a lot to do with fear, which is what we're talking about.
It does. It does.
Because you might do something that they need, which puts you in a situation to be vulnerable, as in the conventional sense, or to not get what you want.
Right. Yes, it does. Cheryl, those situations are very delicate, but I think I've learned more about being a human being, about myself in those situations.
Yes.
Than I have in dozens of other let the good times roll moments.
I agree.
Yeah. Thank you. Kathy?
I believe that, Jesus could heal me, and I feel like that's what this is saying, that he's not going to completely heal me until I've learned all the lessons I need to. And that with him doing so ahead of time or too early, it would create more panic in me. And I feel like I have lessons to learn. Like I've been able to reduce some of my medications because the grief was lifted when my mother died, and I'm off that medication, and another one has been decreased. So I know there's healing, and I think Jesus can heal me. I just don't think I'm completely ready, or there's more lessons. And I think that I have more learning to do,
Mm-hmm. No, that's really, I really appreciate your honesty with that. And it just said a moment ago, after all, in some instance, isn't it better if wouldn't it be wise to use a compromise approach? So yeah, and gradually, as we read before, this evolution is a step-by-step process of learning how to correct and then move forward. And we know that, Kathy, you've made great progress in that area over the last few years. Noel?
Sometimes when someone tells me of a diagnosis, for example, I find my response is precipitated by my own fear for them, and possibly, quote, contagious of either physical or mental type. And my tendency, instead of empathy, as Cheryl was saying, and even just listening, nodding, is to start in, as you said, the big guns with metaphysical truths. And they're not ready for that. Or it's really foreign. And the better thing I find is to listen and ask them what would make them feel better. And whether it's one of those compromises, fine, to get rid of their own fear. The other thing I do is sometimes in meditation in the mornings, a person's name will come to me, and I pray for them by seeing them in light, for example, seeing them in love, seeing them surrounded by love, seeing them unafraid. And of course, this helps me, and I like to believe it helps them too.
That's really great, Noelle. That's in fact, I read in today's workbook lesson, to heal ourselves to heal by forgiving ourselves through first forgiving our brothers. So when we're praying for someone, it's a form of forgiveness in the sense of we're expressing how much we care, how much we love them. And so that expression of love for others actually does benefit ourselves, because we learn to forgive ourselves as we learn to forgive others.
Everything I give is given to myself.
Indeed it is. So 5 short paragraphs, huh? Wow, what a pack. Here's some attempt to summarize some of the ideas that we're in today. 1, let's remember and never be confused. Sickness in the Course of Miracles refers to being your mind being in a state that is not right, not stable, not peaceful, not consistent with creation. And that happens because of being very confused about the levels, including confusion about what you are, what your essence is. And always entails a belief that what is wrong at one level can bleed over into other levels. So this would be level confusion, attributing to problems on one level to another level. It's common and widely believed in our world. In a Course, the body is viewed in a positive light. It's merely, we're neither going to promote it or demote it. It's merely an experience that you have in the physical world. It can frequently be over-examined, over-evaluated, and over-dramatized. We know this, we see this, especially in a day of media where we're exposed to the situations and emotions of so many people. We see how they overly preoccupied with their body. But to use your mind to deny the existence of your body in this world is a particularly poor use of the powers of your mind. So let's not waste any time denying that you're carrying this body along with you in this world. So all of that comes about as a result of more confusion about levels. Miracles are intended to straighten the errors in our mind, to correct the errors in the mind, and thus help correct the confusion about the levels. And by the way, this is fundamental. You can't go on to correcting the downstream errors of the mind while there's still this upstream error about the levels. It's fundamental, it's foundational. So all mistakes, we will learn that when there's a mistake on the physical level, it needs to be corrected on the physical level. When there's a mistake on the mental level, it needs to be corrected on the mental level. And that on the spiritual level, there are no mistakes. So there need not be any correction there. It's perfect. So now we've simplified the task. No mistakes on the spiritual level. Mental mistakes is what we're learning in this Course of Miracles. And physical mistakes, you're left to the means and technologies that are available to you to correct physical mistakes on the physical level. A major step in the atonement is to help you to become clear about these levels so that you undo errors on all the levels. We don't want to have spiritual people that are walking around deeply mistaken about their body and its role in this life, nor do we want to have spiritual people that denigrate the role of their mind and are deeply mistaken about the effect that their mental well-being can have on their experience in this world. The atonement will help to correct our understanding of the levels and then correct the errors that exist on each of the levels. And we're really talking about mind and body errors here now. And any mistake that we might have, what would be an example of an error on the spiritual level would be the belief that as a result of something I did in life, let's say I committed adultery, it would be the belief that that's a mortal sin and that my soul would go to hell for committing a mortal sin. So now a behavior that's on the physical level is being the belief in the mind is that the spirit is condemned because of an action taken on the physical level. Can you see in the context of what we said today, how this is level confusion? And we know a lot of people believe that and suffer greatly in their mind in this life because they believe that their soul is in jeopardy. So and we could go on and on. The purpose here is not to cite all the classic examples. They appear everywhere. And once you start to use this lens of understanding called level confusion and correction of the errors of level confusion, start to use that. Yeah, it's like a tool that you can use in your life. You start to become more and more clear how we had been so fooled by this. And life becomes easier to deal with when we're not afraid of the errors, of our errors causing our jeopardy of our soul, That's a pretty easy, well, not easy for everyone, but for miracle students, that one should be pretty easy. Our soul is not in jeopardy because of these things. And then it allows us to undo the great confusion that comes about in the belief that rules, that principles that apply to the mind affect the body and principles of the body affect the mind. So that's a lot. This was an introduction to this material. We'll continue this tomorrow and in the next section. And then we'll build upon it in subsequent chapters as well. So it won't go away. It is foundational. And so it's not necessary to master it all or be really clear or even believe all the things that we talked about tonight. Just take it in as that's what it said. And understanding will come with time. This is a learning journey, and our learning has been impaired in the past, and now we have an opportunity to correct our mistakes and step forward. So this truly is a great time to be alive. That's all that we're going to read for tonight. I think that was enough. So thank you for having this. I think Noel called it a super soulful Sunday bowl. No, a soulful bowl full Sunday.
Super Soul Bowl.
A super soul bowl.
That's good.
Right. So thank you, Julie, for being our reader. Thank you all for your comments and your interest. This is a learning journey. We're still at the beginning here, but it's so helpful, I find, to spend to get together to talk about these fundamentals. And so let's do it again real soon. Namaste.
You
Thank you,
have a great night.
Peace and
Hey,
love.
John.
everyone.
Thank
Uh-huh.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jonica,
Julie?
do you have time for a question?
I do. Hi, dear.
Hi. So does the Course in Miracles teach us that whatever is happening with us physically is not related to what is happening in our mind? They're not related.
Wait, I wouldn't put it that way. I wouldn't use the word not related, Julie. So let's say, Julie, let's say I worry myself sick all day long and do that for a month and then wind up with a physical illness.
Right.
So that would be related. I think the focus on the Course is how do we heal? And so here would be an example. Well, if I have an ulcer as a result of worry, let's take a medication for my ulcer. But my mind, which was the cause of all my distress to begin with, we're not going to do anything for that. We're going to leave the confusion in place and take a medication for the body. Can you see how the stress, I'm losing sleep, I'm not eating. Matter of fact, I'm not relating to people very well anymore. So the manifestation on the physical level is likely to crop up in other places. So I would say it's related. There are instances where they are related.
Okay.
But healing is another matter. Healing, and so in the Western world, we immediately deal with the physical symptoms and try to mask the physical symptoms.
Right.
Or if it's bacterial infection, we try to address that directly, right?
Right.
but we don't, I'm sure you know, largely under address the mental despair and challenges with happiness and love and relationships. We are not really adequately attended to in our culture. And the course says, if you're going to have a integrated mind, body, and spirit, we have to get around the giving adequate attention to the problems that we're having in our mind.
I think I'm gonna just hang in here and, pray to be shown, how to incorporate the lessons, because I feel a little bit stuck and I can acknowledge that. So I think I'll just try and be gentle about it
I think that's
and just keep trucking.
yeah. This is a big undoing for us all. This teaching system that prevails in our world, and then some really radical, different way of looking at it from A Course in Miracles.
Yeah.
So I like what you said about being gentle with yourself.
Yeah, I'm just gonna keep hanging in here and keep exposing myself to, the learning that's available. And it's okay with me today if, I feel a little bit not concluded. I think that's okay.